My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome to another episode of The Eagle, the Times Union podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Marshall. We are going to kick this episode off with some big news that hit this week in local higher education. The Albany College of Pharmacy and Russell Sage College announced plans to merge. Joining me now to discuss this development is Times Union education reporter Kathleen Moore. Let's talk about the merger between Albany College of Pharmacy and Russell Sage College that you reported on this week. So give us the 35,000-foot view. Like what's happening right now?
Sure. So the College of Pharmacy, which if you want to picture it in Albany, holds this really large piece of real estate right next to Albany Med, next to Albany Law School. This is a big piece of Albany. They have been losing students for more than a decade. And it's been going down dramatically. So for example, before COVID, 2019, they had 1,234 students. Now they're down to 856 students.
Wow, that's tiny.
Yeah, so it's been going down. Despite them, they bought another building for biopharmaceutical research. Now 40% of their students are in health services, not in pharmacy. They've been trying to find other places for the students to draw the students in, but
not working,
right?
They also didn't they also like beef up their athletics program and things like that?
Yeah, they did a lot. And I think the problem is that first of all, when they opened back in the 1800s,
right? This is an old institution.
They were one of about a dozen pharmacy schools in the entire country. Now you can get that pharmacy degree in lots of places. It used to be, remember, think back to the 1800s, you would go out with your pharmacy degree and you would run your own business. And now
you have your mom and pop pharmacy, right? On the street corner.
Exactly. And there was a lot of pride and incredibly hard work, but there was a thing that people wanted to do, right? Now your typical pharmacist works for a big chain like CVS or Walgreens. They are not in control of their own hours, their own business operations, decisions. Yet they have this incredibly specialized degree that is crucial.
So it's not, so what you're seeing essentially through your reporting and research is that the decline in enrollment at the Albany College of Pharmacy isn't due to some mismanagement or it's more due to the changing industry? Yeah,
I don't think it's their fault. I think it's a changing industry. I think pharmacy has become less popular as a career and more places are offering it. So you have more competition for fewer people. It just doesn't work out. So they have a large endowment. So they had a lot of runway. They had a lot of space in which they could think about what to do. 4 years ago, their board started looking for, solutions. They hired a consultant. This is sort of like when you hire like a matchmaker for marriages. There's seriously consultants like that for matches for merging.
Why do I just want to bust into Fiddler on the Roof?
I know, right? So they found this matchmaker who said, hey, let's match you with Russell Sage College.
Okay.
Right. Now, if you think about Russell Sage, though, Russell Sage has been booming. They have been increasing enrollment, adding programs. They had a hard patch a few years back. They merged their two colleges together into one Russell Sage College with 2 campuses in Albany and Troy.
Which is actually worth pointing out because the Albany campus is literally on top of the Albany College of Pharmacy campus. Like the distinction is hard to make when you're in that area.
Yes, they actually share athletic fields. They share security. They share a lot. They share a health services building. I think technically Russell Sage owns it, but the pharmacy students can go there to get their counseling, their medical care.
Yeah, so this isn't like a completely random pairing.
Right, they didn't just pick someone out of nowhere. And Russell Sage is well known for its health, it has a huge nursing program and, occupational therapy and speech therapy and physical therapy, like all of those health things that are, in the same wavelength as pharmacy, right? Taking care of people.
Right. It's not like, it was a completely different thing, like, filmmaking. Although there is a filmmaking program, which is great.
There is. They have an excellent theater program. They mentioned that at length.
Yeah.
Right.
I was trying to think of something that was like the polar opposite.
Right. So college pharmacy has dance.
Yeah.
So there you go, Anyway, the point is that so this matchmaker said, how about you guys get together? But Russell Sage is booming right now. Why would Russell Sage need to take on a program that is struggling right now? Well, what they said to me very honestly was, pharmacy has enough money that they're not going to just collapse like St. Rose did.
Right.
They're going to find a partner, maybe with Albany Med, for example, or have some other college come in. Who knows? They're going to find a partner. So do you want to compete with some re-energized, amazing partner? Or do you want to take them in and not compete with each other?
Seems like a no-brainer.
Right. So Russell Sage said yes, and now they have to go through 2 years of regulatory approvals, but presumably they would get them in this case. And if successful, they will likely be our 3rd largest private school in the entire capital region.
Wow. This kind of comes amid, a lot of change in the higher ed scene here in the region. So, I mean, we're coming off, obviously, St. Rose closure, financial mismanagement, very doom and gloom situation to something that's a little bit different and feels a little more hopeful for the higher ed scene. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think the pain point that we are seeing in higher ed right now is in liberal arts.
My degree.
Right.
That is my degree. Well, no, I mean, that's not my only degree, but that was my first degree.
Right. So liberal arts has this beautiful philosophy to it about learning about the world and learning who you are and figuring out all the ways in which all these different things from biology to math to literature come together to solve modern problems and create a better world. It's a beautiful philosophy.
Sure.
Today's parents say, yeah, what job do you get from that?
Yeah. And
honestly, today's students are saying that too. And while I do think that there is a strong argument that can be made about what kinds of jobs you get from that, tomorrow's leaders you get from that. But, if you get a pharmacy degree, you become a pharmacist. That's a really obvious, clear career.
Right. You go to law school, you become a lawyer.
Right. You go to Russell Sage and you get your nursing degree, you become a nurse, and you can work in lots of different kinds of nursing. It's an easier sell.
Yes.
When you're trying to get people to spend tens of thousands of dollars.
And this is not a uniquely capital region thing. This is like a microcosm of a larger trend around the country.
It's a huge trend around the country. And then, of course, the other trend that's happening is demographically, we are producing fewer children in our society, which means that we are producing fewer 18-year-olds, which means that we will therefore be producing fewer college students unless you get students who are beyond the traditional 18 to 22-year-old college age.
Sure. The non-traditional students.
Right. So any college that can't get those non-traditional students, i.e. grad students, for example, you'll see a big focus on adding grad programs at all these colleges that we see in the capital region. If you can't get those non-traditional students, you better do something big because you have a smaller pie to pull your students from. And if you don't do something big that gets you those more students, your enrollment is going to go down, 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 because our demographics are going down, down, down.
Yeah. So do you see that happening? I mean, with your crystal ball, do you see that kind of trend that happening going forward here specifically, or are we in for more doom and gloom?
Well, there is some doom and gloom in this crystal ball. But what my crystal ball says is that this merger with, Russell Sage and the College of Pharmacy is an example of a potential success story, one of those big things that can draw a bunch of people in, right? Because now you bring people in and say, hey, if you change your mind, if you start in pharmacy, but decide really you'd rather be a nurse, we've got you covered, right? There's a lot more transferability within the same college. You're not having to go and reapply somewhere else. And so that's a potentially big jump toward that. Let's draw more people in, right? And we are also seeing a lot of our local colleges adding tons of grad degrees, which may work.
Is there any kind of like data or sense about what the most popular kind of specialty program is around here, like universally?
Nursing.
Nursing, okay. Right.
Yes, it is. And it's not just here. It's definitely statewide. Nursing is the biggest. I haven't seen stats nationally, but nursing is going to be right up there.
And that's coming off of course, a nursing shortage, right?
Yes, and that is one of the reasons why it's so popular. It's got everything the students want, right? High pay, guaranteed job, and you're helping save the world.
That's very attractive.
We're teaching students nowadays that it's really important for them to think about the whole picture. Don't just go, hey, I want the job that pays the most, because in that case, they really should be an electrician or a plumber. Come on now. Let me put in the plug there for that. They should all become electricians and plumbers. We desperately need them to.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you're going to go to college, a lot of these students really want to be part of changing the world, making the world a better place. Then they become old and jaded like us, right? But they start from that really beautiful place. So nursing is going to be attractive because it fits all the boxes.
All of this said, very hopeful kind of outlook for how these local colleges and universities might be looking toward the future. However, things that are going on, maybe at the federal level with college loans and debt and all of that stuff. How does that fit into this?
So it's fascinating. The students are starting to become very cost conscious of ending up in a lot of debt. When I was talking with the Russell Sage College president, he was saying to me, if you were to compare college to the cost of a car, Russell Sage is cheaper. Now, let me just admit that these 18-year-olds are not buying a brand new car for $50,000, but
maybe inheriting an old car from a relative.
But it's fascinating. But also at the same time, colleges in our local area after St. Rose closed are becoming much more aware of their debt and the debt they're taking on. Russell Sage has managed to pay off a lot of its debt. And one of the things that they talked about their merger with pharmacy was that pharmacy has a debt of $25 million.
Oh, okay.
But they have a lot of endowment money, and a lot of that is unrestricted. And then once they merge, they could sell some buildings, they can get some efficiencies, and then they can pay off a big chunk of that debt.
Yeah.
And they talked about that openly. This is not the kind of thing colleges used to be aware of either. Everyone is finally starting to think about long-term finances, both the students and the colleges. This is a great improvement in society, really.
Yeah, another more hopeful aspect of something that, when you're talking about debt and student loans and how expensive, college and universities are these days, that's nice to hear. You can read more about the merger between the Albany College of Pharmacy and Russell Sage, as well as all of the latest news and features that we report on. Visit timesunion.com. Let's take a short break, but when we return, we are going to celebrate a certain someone's 461st birthday. Shakespeare. I'm talking about Shakespeare.
Why is healthcare so expensive? What's happening with climate change? And are elections safe? You can find answers to those questions and a lot more with Capitol Confidential from me, Dan Clark. I give you the latest news and analysis from the state capitol and beyond. Sign up now at CapitolConfidential.com. That's Capital with an O, confidential.com.
"12-year-old Jaliek Rainwalker vanished without a trace from a small upstate New York village on a cool November night in 2007. His adoptive parents say he ran away, Police believe he was murdered, but a body has never been found, and a suspect has never been named.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah,
Appreciate
okay,
that.
all right, but you don't want to talk.
Then when I learned they were trying to undo the adoption, that's when I learned that this story was very complicated, well, a lot more complicated than I even thought.
Almost 2 decades later, the case remains unsolved. I'm Jessica Marshall.
And I'm Wendy Libertor.
In this podcast from the Times-Union, we take a deep dive into the mystery of this missing child and try to find some answers.
So have you come to terms that Jalik is probably dead?
Yes. I feel that he was killed on November 1st, 2007.
Available now, wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you're enjoying this podcast, take advantage of all the Times-Union has to offer and support our efforts to bring you award-winning journalism by becoming a Times-Union subscriber today. Go to timesunion.com/subscribe.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Eagle, a Times-Union podcast. I'm Jessica Marshall. The Bard of Avon is turning 461 this week. Joining me now for a little celebratory monologuing are 2 local artists who both acted in and directed Shakespearean productions in the Capital Region. The Times-Union's own Tony Pallone and artist Jay Scala.
So I'm Scala. This is a monologue from Richard II. It happens in Act 3, Scene 2. Richard has just come back from Ireland fighting a rebellion that's going on there, and he comes back to England, and he's relieved to be home, but he gets this news that the people have kind of risen up against him. This guy that he exiled has come back with his army, and everyone's flocking to him, and he finds out that some of his closest friends, these men that he loved, have been killed standing up for him, and he has this sort of confrontation with his own mortality. And
that sounds like a big existential moment for him.
Yeah, exactly. And so he goes into this speech. No matter where of comfort no man speak. Let's talk of graves and worms and epitaphs. Make dust our paper, and with rainy eyes write sorrow on the bosom of the earth. Let's choose executors and talk of wills. And yet not so, for what can we bequeath save our deposed bodies to the ground, our lands, our lives, and all our Bolingbrookes, and nothing may we call our own but death, and that small model of the barren earth that serves as paste and cover to our bones. For heaven's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings. How some have been deposed, some slain in war, some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed, some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping killed, all murdered. For within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his court. And there the antic sits, scoffing his state and grinning at his pomp, allowing him a breath. A little scene to monarchize, be feared, and kill with looks, infusing him with self and vain conceit, as if this flesh which walled about our life were brass impregnable. And humoured thus, comes at the last, and with a little pin bores through his castle wall, and farewell, king. Cover your heads! Mock not flesh and blood with solemn reverence. Throw away respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty, for you have but mistook me all this while. I live with bread, like you. Feel want, taste grief, need friends. Subjected thus, how can you say to me, I am a king?
How am I supposed to follow that?
With your own speech.
I love it.
All right, so I'm Tony Pallone, and I am going to do a monologue from Richard III, and I really got to love this play. I saw a movie called Looking for Richard that Al Pacino did, and that's how he just sort of explores Shakespeare through the context of Richard III. And there's just a wonderful scene. Richard is this sort of like hideous, deformed, hunchback guy, and yet he's got this evil charm. And one of the things he does is, as Pacino will say in the movie, is like he looks right at the audience, tells them what he's going to do, and then he goes and he does it. And in this one, he's just talked to this young woman, Anne, whose husband and his father he has killed in battle, and yet he still thinks, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to seduce her. So why not? So she's just left, having been charmed by him, and he turns to the audience and he says, "Was ever woman in this humor wooed? Was ever woman in this humor won? I'll have her. But I will not keep her long. What? I, that killed her husband and his father, to take in her heart's extremest hate, having curses in her mouth, tears in her eyes, the bleeding witness of my hatred by, and I no thing to back my suit withal, but the plain devil in dissembling looks, and yet to win her, all the world to nothing. Ha! My dukedom to a beggarly denier, I do mistake my person all this while. Upon my life, I find, although she cannot, myself to be a marvelous, proper man. Albeit charges for a looking glass, and entertain some score or two of tailors to study fashions to adorn my body. Since I am crept in favor with myself, I will maintain it at some little cost. But first, I'll turn yon fellow in his grave, and then return, lamenting, to my love. Shine out, fair sun, till I have bought a glass, that I may see my shadow as I pass.
She finds, though.
She finds, yeah, I knew he would catch that. I knew he would catch that.
Let's pretend this is my English 300 class in college.
Okay. Yeah.
Dissecting Shakespeare. So, Richard II, Richard III. Why did you choose those particular monologues?
Okay, I'll go first.
We'll start chronologically.
Sure. So I wanted to do that speech for like this particular moment in our sort of political world. I think wherever you look, there's people turn the people in charge into idols, into heroes, and they're just some guy. And I think there's this moment, this particular moment of the play shows, the king, who was thought to be God's appointed representative on earth by medieval people, acknowledging that he's just some guy. And I think, that perspective on our leaders, our rulers, is important to have. It's important to recognize that they are not superior to us. They live with bread like us.
Now, that's a very different vibe from Richard III, it sounds. Not having studied this, it feels like Richard III has a little bit of a different take on that and what a king should be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I feel he's got it despite himself. Despite what a hideous creature he is, he's got this power and he's going to use it. And there's just something that I find really kind of appealing about that character. It was also the series House of Cards. Kevin Spacey's character really did kind of, I think, really took off on that whole Richard III idea. He would do that, break the fourth wall, look right at the camera, and say, here's what I'm going to do, and so there's a very a nice parallel there. And I suppose there would be a parallel between Richard III and
Spacey.
Well,
I actually saw him play the part.
But in our current administration too. I mean, it's like, we have a president who comes home and is like, guess what I'm going to do, and you can't stop me,
Well, I mean, it's all hinged on the fact that it's Shakespeare's birthday today, right?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, you tell me, but I think no one knows for certain what Shakespeare's birthday was, right?
Yeah, I believe this date is when he was registered, when his baptism was registered.
Okay.
So
this is what we celebrate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And he would be, assuming that this is his actual birth date or, give or take a little time, 461, right?
Correct.
Wow, nice. I'm glad somebody did the math ahead of time.
I had to use a calculator. So what is it about Shakespeare that captures your imagination and makes you want to deliver monologues? Is that an existential question?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Shakespeare, presents kind of a particular challenge because in some ways it's almost like speaking a different language, right? But I also feel as though anytime I'm learning Shakespeare, I always feel like I'm doing something good for myself, like it's poetry that I'm learning. It's not just grunting and it's
shaking your fist at the sky.
Right. It's timeless language, and another thing about it that never ceases to kind of amaze me is like so. All right, to get existential for a minute, I don't believe in an afterlife, right?
Whoa,
I think
way existential.
I think this is our life. This is what we've got. But there are ways that you can sort of live on and even be potentially immortal. And I can point to no better example than Shakespeare. Here we are 461 years later, and it's not like we're just talking about him out of a historic interest. Like there was this guy once. It's like his work is still alive all over the world. People are adapting it, putting it in crazy contexts. I directed a Merry Wives of Windsor set in the 1970s with 70s music, and that worked out so well that I did the following year. I think I did Midsummer Night's Dream in the 1980s. So but I've seen it in so many different contexts. It always works because the structure is just so there. And I think of Shakespeare as like the best example of immortality I can come up with.
Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe and eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. He was very aware of the power of language to preserve something in time. I don't know if Shakespeare will go on forever. The head of the theater program when I was at BU, Jim Petosa, said to me in one of his drama criticism classes, he said to the class, I think there will be a time when we grow beyond Shakespeare. And I was scandalized. I was like, I love Shakespeare. You can't say that. But as I've grown older and I've mulled on those words more, I think the reason Shakespeare remains so potent to us is because we exist in a society that still sort of is structured around these medieval power dynamics when it comes to hierarchy, when it comes to gender relations, when it comes to religion. And I think, maybe someday there will be a world where we're not, confined by those very rigid structures of authority, and people will be like an evil king. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would I be subject to the whims of someone who arbitrarily has so much more power than me?
Well, a big happy birthday to William Shakespeare. You can catch Jay Scala and Tony Pallone performing at the Capital Region Festival of Theater in June. That is it for this week. We will be back next week with more from inside the newsroom. The Eagle is a production of the Times-Union, produced and edited by myself, Jessica Marshall, with help from Erica Smith and the Times-Union digital team. Our music is Flyin' by Top Floor. Special thanks to Kathleen Moore, Tony Pallone, and Jay Scala for their contributions to this episode. Got questions or comments about the Eagle or any of our other podcasts here at the Times-Union? Please email us at podcast@timesunion.com.